A stoic CEO collapses at the clinic, only to regain consciousness and discover that the nurse who rescued him is the very woman he dismissed years earlier. The emergency room doors slammed open as paramedics rushed in, pushing a stretcher at breakneck speed. Male, mid-30s, unresponsive. One paramedic barked, urgency sharpening his tone. Sweat beaded on the patient's forehead as his pulse faded. Possible heart attack. Weak pulse, blood pressure dropping rapidly, he added. Overhead, fluorescent lights flickered as Eliza Moore entered the fray, already slipping on her gloves. She just finished checking on a patient recovering from minor surgery, but the sight of the incoming stretcher snapped her into action. Get him on oxygen. Hook up the crash card and monitor leads, she instructed, her voice precise and steady. Around her, the medical team moved seamlessly, each person responding instantly to her orders. The man on the stretcher was ashen, his lips tinged blue, sweat glistening on his brow, his shirt soaked and clinging to his chest. One paramedic had already loosened his tie and unbuttoned his shirt. Another was applying defibrillator pads. Eliza leaned over him, fitting an oxygen mask to his face and gently tilting his head. Her fingers automatically sought his wrist for a pulse, but as she studied his features, she froze. That chiseled jaw, the subtle cleft in his chin, the way his dark hair, though disheveled, still fell neatly to the side of faint scars she hadn't seen in years. Her breath hitched. No, it couldn't be. She leaned closer, adjusting the mask, trying to steady her trembling hands as his head lolled to the side, revealing his face fully. Recognition struck her like lightning. Adrian Cole. Her hands hovered, paralyzed above his chest. A chill swept through her. The room didn't spin, but her world did. Her heartbeat thundered, drowning out the monitor's beeps. For a moment, the ER faded away, replaced by memories of a boardroom 5 years before. Stark white walls, a silent nod, a signature, and her life unraveling. She remembered it all the way her hand shook as she read her termination letter. The confusion and humiliation, the blame for a mistake she tried to prevent. She'd been scapegoated by a superior, but Adrian hadn't questioned it. He hadn't even looked at her, just signed her dismissal without a second thought. And now here he was, Adrian Cole, once her inspiration, then the source of her deepest betrayal, now unconscious and helpless. Eliza. Dr. Green's voice snapped her back to reality. We need compressions now. Her hands hesitated for a split second, but instinct took over stronger than pain, pride, or the sting of old wounds. She moved. Eliza Moore, performing CPR, she announced, voice unwavering. She pressed her hands to his chest and began compression sharp, rhythmic, relentless. 34, Dr. Green counted, preparing the defibrillator, charging to 200, stay with us. For lines were inserted, medications administered, adrenaline injected. The team worked in perfect harmony. But Eliza's focus never wavered, her arms aching with every push. She refused to think about who he was or what he'd done, only that a life was slipping away beneath her hands. Clear, the technician called. She stepped back as the defibrillator paddles jolted his body. The flat line on the monitor flickered, then jumped a heartbeat. Weak but present. The room released a collective breath. Eliza leaned back, chest heaving, sweat at her temples, gloves damp. Her eyes stayed fixed on his face. He was alive. Dr. Green gave her a quick nod of approval. Good job, Moore. That was close. She nodded silently, her throat tight not just from the life they'd saved, but from a heartache he'd once caused her and the heart she'd just restarted. After Adrian was stabilized and moved to the observation room, now sedated and connected to a ventilator, Eliza lingered by the glass window. She watched as the chaos faded, leaving only quiet and the steady hum of machines. The past had come crashing into the ER, damaged, desperate, and on the brink of death. This time, she had held his life in her hands. She had chosen to save him. Yet deep down, beyond duty and reason, Eliza sensed this chapter between them was far from finished. The room was dim, bathed in the gentle glow of dawn filtering through the blinds. The only sounds were the beeps of medical equipment and the soft rhythm of a heart slowly regaining its strength. The peace felt almost unnatural for someone like Adrian Cole. His eyelids fluttered as he fought his way back to consciousness, his body heavy with exhaustion. Years of corporate battles had trained his mind to snap to attention, and slowly, awareness returned. He drew a shallow breath and forced his eyes open. A white ceiling, the sterile scent of disinfectant, monitors blinking, and a figure standing by the window with a tablet and hand scrubs unmistakable. He blinked again as the silhouette approached. Eliza noticed the movement first, her breath catching. She had prepared herself for this moment, but no amount of professionalism could still her pounding heart when she saw his eyes open. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she greeted, her voice steady despite the tension in her hands. Adrian turned his head, throat dry, struggling to form words. "Where am I?" "You're at St. Vincent's Community Clinic," she replied. "You were admitted 2 days ago after suffering cardiac arrest. You've been under observation, but you're stable now." He frowned, studying her as if trying to solve a puzzle. "And you are—" "Eliza." "Nurse Moore," she answered, keeping her tone formal. He nodded slightly, his gaze lingering on her a moment too long. There was something in her demeanor calm, yet distant, her use of his name devoid of either warmth or resentment, just familiarity. It unsettled him. "You've been my nurse?" "Yes, since you arrived." He shifted, wincing at the pain. "How long was I out?" "About 36 hours. We induced mild hypothermia to protect your heart. You responded well." "Good," he said. "I need my phone." Eliza was unsurprised by his need to regain control, to return to the world he'd left in chaos. "Your belongings are safe, but the doctor recommends no work for at least a week. Your heart needs to recover." "I have an entire company waiting," Adrian muttered. Eliza adjusted his fore, her movements practiced, though her mind raced. She was struck by how familiar it all felt to sound his voice, the set of his jaw when irritated, the impatience in every word. He still had no idea who she was or what he'd done to her. Yet here she was, monitoring his vitals, keeping him alive. "You're lucky to be here at all," she said quietly. "If the ambulance had been 5 minutes later, you wouldn't have survived." Adrian paused, sensing a shift in her tone weight, a familiarity he couldn't place. He looked at her more closely. "You seem familiar," he said slowly. "Have we met before?" Eliza hesitated, just for a heartbeat. Memories flashed late nights at the office, quiet elevator rides, a fleeting moment when she thought he saw her, and then the day it all ended. A termination letter, a signature, no explanation. She forced a polite smile. "I work here often. Maybe you've seen me around." He didn't look convinced. "I never forget a face." "Maybe yours just forgot me," she murmured, almost too softly. But he heard, and it lingered with him. She turned away before he could press further. "The doctor will be in soon. Try to rest, Mr. Cole." As she left, Adrian reclined against his pillow, watching the door close. There was something about that nurse, the way she carried herself, the way she looked at him. It wasn't admiration or fear, but something guarded, something with history. It didn't add up, yet it felt like an old thread left untied. He didn't know who she really was, but something inside told him they'd crossed paths before and that it had mattered. Adrian Cole was not made for idleness. Even confined to a hospital bed, tethered to machines, his instincts screamed for action. Within 12 hours of waking, he was demanding updates from his assistant, requesting his laptop and insisting on his phone every few minutes. The room soon filled with terse calls and sharp commands until Eliza intervened. "Mr. Cole, your heart is still healing," she said, her tone calm but unyielding as she adjusted the monitor. "You need rest, not boardroom negotiations." "I am resting," Adrian replied, eyes glued to his phone. "I'm also keeping $1 billion company from falling apart while I'm stuck here." Eliza took a slow breath, tamping down her frustration. "Your vitals spike every time you take a call. That's not recovery, it's sabotage." He glanced at her. "You have no idea what it's like to carry this much responsibility." "I know what it's like to lose everything," she said quietly. Adrian looked up, startled. "What's that supposed to mean?" Eliza paused. She had promised herself she would remain detached. But his arrogance, the disregard for his own health and those around him broke through her restraint. She met his gaze. "It means I once worked for a man who thought nothing of signing away someone's future for convenience. A man who didn't bother to ask questions, who erased a name from the company's system without a second glance." Adrian blinked. "Are you talking about me?" "Yes," Eliza replied, unwavering. He stared at her, confusion deepening. "I've never fired anyone without cause." "You didn't even know my name," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "I was a junior associate at Cole Financial 5 years ago. I took the blame for a report error. That wasn't mine. Your head of operations made the mistake, but I was the easiest one to sacrifice. You signed the letter without looking at it. I lost everything, my confidence, my savings, my career." The room fell silent. Adrian sat up, stunned, color draining from his face. "Eliza Moore," he said slowly. "I remember now." "Congratulations," she replied, turning away. "Now you're destroying something else, your own body, all because you refused to let go of work for a few days." She picked up the tablet to update his chart. "I recommend you consider that before you push your heart to the brink again." With that, she left, leaving Adrian stunned in a room that suddenly felt much colder. He didn't make another call for the remainder of the day. That night, long after the clinic had quieted, Adrian lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Eliza Moore, how had he missed it? The woman from Marketing Eager, quiet, always ready to help. He now remembered how she'd been blamed for a disastrous quarterly report, how she'd wept a security let her out. He'd never reviewed the case himself, trusting his COO's assurance that it was resolved. One signature, one less problem. He hadn't thought about it again until now. Guilt crept through him, slow and piercing. He reached for his phone on the bedside table. With effort, he accessed the archived HR system. After several failed logins and 2 password resets, he found the termination file. Eliza Moore dismissed. The record cited mishandling of financial documents, with no review or appeal. Attached was a memo sent privately to HR, in which the department manager admitted fault only after Eliza had been let go. Adrian's stomach twisted. He had ended her career with a single pen stroke, and now she had saved his life with her own hands. He turned off the screen and lay in the darkness, his breathing shallow. He had built his career on quick decisions and clean breaks, but for the first time he wondered, how many others had he failed to see? And why did it matter so much that this woman, the one he'd wronged most deeply, had chosen to save him? It mattered more than he wanted to admit. Adrian didn't sleep that night. Even after his vital signs returned to normal and the nurses dimmed the lights, he stayed awake, eyes wide, jaw tense, his thoughts racing in endless circles. The steady beep of the monitor was no match for the turmoil in his mind. Eliza's words echoed in the sterile silence, edged with the pain he hadn't realized he was capable of causing. She had been right, he hadn't even known her name. At the time, she was just another file in a stack of HR decisions, a junior associate in a department under scrutiny. The quarterly report had been a disaster. A client nearly walked away, and the board demanded accountability. His COO, Calvin Jensen, had assured him the problem was solved. She's young, careless, easily replaced. Adrian hadn't questioned it. He'd nodded, signed the letter, and moved on. But now he couldn't move on, not from this, not from her, not from the look she'd given him. As if he embodied every injustice she'd endured. He reached for the tablet again, hands trembling, and navigated the company's secure archive. Password, permissions, verification codes. He was patient, for once. He searched for her name, more Eliza. There it was. He opened the file. The reason for dismissal: mishandling client financial reports, breach of protocol, risk to investor trust. He remembered the crisis, the panic, the late-night meetings. Calvin had insisted it was an intern's mistake. Adrian scrolled to the end of the file, a memo dated 2 weeks after Eliza's dismissal. His heart pounded as he read. The department manager, Calvin Jensen, admitted he had submitted the wrong version of the report. The error had come from his own drive, not the junior associates. Eliza had flagged the discrepancy, but was ignored. Adrian froze. She hadn't made the mistake, she had tried to prevent it, and he had dismissed her. His hands turned cold as he read further. Emails, timestamps, a note from HR recommending discretion. The board had never learned the truth. The case was quietly buried to avoid embarrassment. No apology, no reinstatement, just silence. He leaned back, breathing heavily, guilt pressing down on him with a weight greater than his heart attack. He remembered her now, the young woman who arrived early, stayed late, took careful notes, and treated everyone with kindness. She wasn't just a name, she had been exceptional, and he had destroyed that without a second thought. Now, she was the one watching over him, the one who had fought to bring him back to life, the one whose voice had both accused and rescued him. He set the tablet aside and covered his face with his hands. He'd made mistakes before, bad investments, poor hires, strategic errors, but this wasn't just a professional misstep. This was personal. This was someone's life, and he had shattered it. Adrian had always prided himself on being decisive and in control. But that night, surrounded by the quiet hum of hospital machines and his own regret, everything he thought he knew about right and wrong, about power and compassion, began to blur. He couldn't undo the past, but maybe he could do something now. He could start by truly seeing her not as a name in a file or as a casualty of mistake, but as the woman who had chosen to save him despite everything. He owed her more than an apology. He owed her a chance at something real. Rain battered the clinic windows, the storm's relentless drumming echoing through the building. The power had gone out, plunging the corridors into darkness, with only the emergency lights casting a faint red glow. Eliza moved swiftly, flashlight in hand, checking on patients and ensuring the backup generators were working. Her thoughts were scattered partly on the storm, partly on Adrian. He had been quiet since their last conversation. He hadn't asked for his phone again. He barely spoke, but she often felt his gaze on her. In his eyes, something had shifted, not arrogance, not quite guilt, but a searching look, as if he was seeing her for the first time. See? You believe in yourself. Eliza lowered her gaze, a lump forming in her throat that made speaking difficult. You didn't have to do this. I know, Adrian replied quietly. That's exactly why I wanted to. She nodded, swallowing the emotion rising inside her. Thank you. A quiet understanding passed between them, deeper than any apology could ever be. In the days that followed, Adrian offered to help not as a benefactor, but as an equal. At first, Eliza was hesitant, but as she watched him truly listen to community leaders, her team, and the people they serve, she agreed. They began meeting regularly, brainstorming outreach programs, sketching plans for mobile clinics, and developing new strategies. Adrian brought structure and connections. Eliza brought compassion and practical insight. Their partnership felt natural. He provided organization where she needed it, and she softened the edges he never realized he had. Sometimes their hands brushed over blueprints. Sometimes their eyes lingered after a shared laugh. But they didn't rush anything. Instead, they let each moment unfold slowly, like embers gradually catching fire. Little by little, the distance between them shrank, not through grand gestures, but through trust, patience, and a mutual choice to meet each other halfway, both as they were and as they were becoming. One crisp Thursday morning, Adrian had just finished coordinating supply deliveries for Eliza's clinic when his phone rang. The caller ID was familiar. His former board chairman, the man he'd reported to before taking medical leave. Adrian hesitated, already sensing the weight of the conversation. Adrian, the voice came smoothly. We want you back. The CEO position is open. The vote was unanimous. He felt the air shift. New York, the boardroom, the skyscrapers and high-stakes deals. It was everything he had once worked for, everything that used to define him. Yet now, it didn't feel like his life anymore. I'll need some time, Adrian replied, his voice steady. You've earned this, the chairman continued. No one can lead like you, but you'll need to decide soon. People are waiting. The call ended, and the silence that followed was louder than any boardroom debate. Later that evening, Adrian climbed up to the clinic's rooftop terrace, a quiet space where he knew Eliza liked to go when the day felt overwhelming. The sun was setting as Eliza reached for the supply closet. Suddenly, her foot slipped on an unseen puddle from a leaky ceiling. She gasped, her flashlight clattering to the floor, but before she could hit the ground, strong arms caught her arm she instantly recognized. She looked up. Adrian. He stood there, still in his loose gray patient shirt, for band taped his arm, his expression tense. "I thought you were asleep," she whispered, still half in his embrace. "I heard you fall," he said, his voice rough. I couldn't just lie there. I was afraid I'd stand by and do nothing again." For a moment, neither of them moved. The storm raged outside, but inside, the silence between them was thick with unspoken words. Eliza's hand curled into his shirt, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Adrian's eyes met hers intense, but vulnerable. "I'm fine," she murmured, almost a whisper. "I know," he replied, but he didn't let go. The moment lingered. She could feel his breath, warm against her cheek. His hands were gentle but steady at her waist. She knew she should step away and remind him he was still her patient. Remind herself he was still the man who'd once ended her career. But she didn't, because in that moment, none of that felt as real as the way he looked at her, not with power or pride, but with something like awe, regret, and hope. "Eliza," he said, her name soft as a confession. She gently stepped back, and he released her reluctantly. Her cheeks were flushed, but not from the fall. "You shouldn't be out of bed," she said, reaching for her flashlight. "I'll survive," he replied, watching her closely. She smiled a small, genuine smile. He chuckled softly, surprising her. It wasn't cold or calculated. It was warm, human. "Come on," she said, heading down the hall. "Let's get you back before Dr. Green finds you and sends you straight to the ER." Adrian followed, slower but close behind. As they walked, the emergency lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows on the walls. They didn't speak, but something had changed. Their steps matched. Their silence felt easy, and for the first time, Eliza wondered if healing sometimes began not with medicine, but with fall in the hands that chose to catch you. Life at the clinic returned to normal after the storm, but nothing between Adrian and Eliza felt quite the same. He stopped demanding his phone first thing in the morning. He read books Eliza brought him from the patient library, biographies, essays on leadership, even a medical memoir or two. He asked questions, not out of impatience, but from genuine curiosity. Their conversations grew, short at first, then deeper. More than once, Eliza caught him watching her, not with the arrogance of the past, but as if he was trying to truly understand her, to know who she was now. One afternoon, Dr. Green stopped Eliza in the hallway, holding a folder. "You didn't tell me your community clinic project got approved," he said with a smile. Eliza froze. "Excuse me? The grant application you submitted last year, it's been funded. Full support. Equipment, staff, even mobile units. The Whitmore Foundation signed off last week." Eliza took the folder, hands trembling as she read the details. Her dream of accessible health care for underserved neighborhoods was coming true, a dream she'd nearly abandoned. "But they rejected it months ago," she whispered. "I never reapplied." Dr. Green shrugged. "Someone did. Through a partner organization. Anonymous support. It went through fast." Clutching the folder to her chest, Eliza's heart raced. That evening, after most of the staff had left, she found Adrian in his room, the folder still in her hands. He looked up from his book, immediately reading her expression. "You knew," she said quietly. He didn't deny it. "I may have spoken to someone behind the scenes." "Why?" she asked. He paused, closing his book. "I've spent my life building things that only benefited people like me. When I saw what you were trying to do, I realized it mattered so much more." She stood there, watching him. There was no performance, no pitch, just a man trying to do what was right. "I didn't want you to feel like it was charity," he added, "or some kind of apology." "But it is, isn't it?" she asked. He nodded. "It's what I should have done 5 years ago." Golden sunlight spilled across the rooftops as Eliza stood by the railing, her hair pulled back, the breeze tugging loose strands around her face. She didn't turn when Adrian approached. Instead, she smiled, already knowing it was him. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she said softly. "I think I just saw my old self," Adrian answered. She glanced at him, curiosity in her eyes. "They want me to return," he continued. CEO of Global Reach, full authority. Eliza's expression remained composed. "Congratulations," she said after a moment. "But going back would mean leaving." Adrian added quietly, "Leaving New York, the clinic, you..." Her features softened. "I figured as much." He moved closer, his voice low and uncertain. "For years, I made choices based on logic and strategy. I thought that was strength. But now," he met her gaze, "now I see the bravest thing I can do is choose what's uncertain, something real, even if it's messy." He drew a steadying breath. "I want to stay. Here, with you, with this clinic and this mission. It's the first time anything has ever truly mattered to me." Eliza's eyes glistened in the fading light. "You don't have to give up everything," she whispered. "I'm not," he replied. "I'm trading up choosing meaning over power, presence over profit. I don't want to be the man who wins deals, but loses the person who inspired him to be better." A gentle silence settled between them. Slowly, Eliza reached for his hand. Adrian took it as though it was the most genuine thing he'd ever held. In that quiet moment, surrounded by city lights and the hum of life below, Adrian made the most important decision of his life, not for shareholders or headlines, but for the heart that had taught him how to feel again. The ribbon at the entrance of the new community health center fluttered in the morning breeze, its white silk glowing in the soft sunlight. Rows of chairs filled the courtyard. Community members, leaders, staff, and press gathered as balloons drifted in the wind and children laughed nearby. At the center stood a polished plaque, Morin Cole Hope Center. Eliza took the podium, poised and graceful, her name tag pinned over her heart. Her speech was heartfelt, expressing gratitude and vision, honoring the patients who inspired the mission, the team who built it, and the city that supported them. When she finished, Adrian stepped up. He wore a navy suit without a tie, his smile gentler now, his presence more approachable than commanding. He adjusted the microphone, searching for Eliza's eyes in the crowd, and when he found them, everything else faded away. "I used to live by numbers," he began, his voice steady. "Quarterly reports, market shares, margins, every decision. Every person was a calculation." He paused, his gaze fixed on Eliza. "Until the day I signed a paper I never read, in the career of a woman who should have been seen, supported, and believed in, but I didn't see her." The crowd grew quiet. Years later, I collapsed and woke to find that same woman saving my life not just once, but again and again. Eliza's eyes shone with unshed tears. Adrian stepped away from the podium, holding a small velvet box. "I've signed thousands of contracts, some worth millions. But today, I want to sign something far more valuable." He stopped in front of her, dropped to one knee, and opened the box. "Eliza Moore," he said, voice unwavering, "you saw the best of me when I showed you my worst. You gave me purpose when I thought I was only power. You healed my heart in every way that mattered. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Eliza's cheeks as she laughed through her sobs. "Yes," she whispered, nodding before she could speak louder. "Yes, Adrian. Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her as the crowd erupted in applause. Children clapped, doctors cheered, and even the mayor wiped away a tear. But for Eliza and Adrian, the world faded away, leaving only the echo of a choice and a love that had rewritten both their lives. That evening, as the celebration quieted, they walked hand in hand along the beach outside the city, barefoot in the cool sand, the sky glowing orange behind them, the waves whispered at their feet, the sea calm as if honoring the peace they found together. Eliza rested her head on Adrian's shoulder. "If I hadn't saved you that night," she murmured, her voice soft in the breeze, "everything would be different." Adrian squeezed her hand. "If you hadn't saved me," he replied, "maybe I'd still be alive, but I wouldn't be living." He turned, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. For once, there was no past to haunt them, no future fear, only the present, filled with trust, purpose, and a love that needed no more words. Just the sound of the waves and two hearts finally at home. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable Journey A story of redemption, second chances, and a love born not from perfection, but from healing. If Eliza and Adrian's story touched you, reminded you that people can change, that wounds can heal, and that love often arrives in the most unexpected ways, then you're exactly where you belong, with soul-stirring stories. We believe in stories that do more than entertain. They remind us who we are, who we've been, and who we still have the chance to become. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories and join a community drawn to hope, humanity, and healing. Because sometimes the most powerful stories aren't loud, they whisper their way into your soul. We'll see you in the next one.